You watch the show for me to be real with you. I'm a fan. You're a fan. You want somebody to be real with what's going on. So I'm going to tell you, this isn't as bad as you're going to hear, and this isn't as good as you're going to hear. This is, though, the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're going to live stream a little Shark Tank live tonight. I hope everybody is having a nice, warm Tuesday evening. The news that happened right before we went on the air was Tyler Barron decommitted from Ole Miss to go to Louisville. We thought we had avoided that situation, but it turned out that Wesley Walker and Tamarian McDonald, they were able to work, and they got Louisville to basically throw some money in to get it done, essentially. Now, this is what I think about this situation. And we're going to be joined on this show by Brad Logan potentially in a little bit and David Eckert potentially in a little bit. So stand by for them as well. But in this Tyler Barron situation, and you can go back and watch my shows for the last 3 weeks to prove that I'm saying this. But the four main people that I assumed were going to be the starters on the front line was Princely Amuamielon, Walter Nolan, J.J. Pegues, and Jared Ivey. I have steadfastly said that throughout this whole process. And I believe that all the way up until 3 o'clock today, whenever he was still committed to Ole Miss, which made him a flip candidate from the start because that was something that Louisville could sell to Tyler Barron. It's like, hey, if you're going to go there, you're going to go sit behind Princely Amuamielon. He's the best pass rusher in the transfer portal. You're competing with that guy. If you're looking for a run side, a defensive end, strong side defensive end, Tyler Barron is not as good as Jared Ivey. So starting of somebody that has started the last 2 years, that's probably going to be a pretty important thing. And Lane Kiffin has talked about players needing to embrace roles. And honestly, we're good to know it's better that he went to Louisville than when he got to the fall and he was unhappy. It could have been a locker room problem. It could have been all of that stuff because we're living in the age right now of mercenary college football, for better or worse. So it's better to know these things up front. Now, I do think it's a loss because of the pass rush and the NASCAR packages they could go. You could put Amuamielon, you could put Jared Ivey at a 3 technique, you could have put Barron out at the end and got after the quarterback. And that is the package that probably is affected the most. That's what's going to be affected the most. But if you're looking at straight, balanced run defense as a front four, those are the four that this whole time that I assumed was going to be starting. It was going to be Amuamielon. It was going to be Walter Nolan. It was going to be J.J. Pegues, and it was going to be Jared Ivey. So it has to become who is okay with being behind Amuamielon, behind Jared Ivey. And if that was going to be a problem, then that was going to be a problem as well. So let's bring in David Eckert right now. David's nice enough to join us. We're on the air, David, just so you know.
Beautiful.
What are you hearing at the moment about this whole Tyler Barron thing whenever you've just been combing around?
It was a surprise to me today. So I don't have a whole lot of explanation as to why at the moment. I'm still working on that. But yeah, obviously of the 3 that have departed the class, I think comfortably the most significant one. So we'll see. I think if you're Ole Miss, you got to try to replace it. You got to try to find, another option if you can. But it's late in the game, so we'll see.
Well, this is what I was saying before we got you joined the program. I have been pretty steadfast ever since mid-December saying the starting 4 defensive linemen after Walter Nolan committed, it was Princely Amuamielon, J.J. Pegues, Walter Nolan, and then Jared Ivey. was the 4 that I was assuming was the starter. And if that is the case, if that is what the way this is going to work out, isn't the big winner tonight Kamarion Franklin?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, to me, yeah, obviously it's going to provide more opportunity, assuming there's no replacement, which I would not make that assumption. But it's going to provide more opportunity to that freshman class that has some really talented guys coming in. But to me, right, and whether or not it would have been Ivy or Barron at that spot, I think, the impact that this departure has is on depth. And I think depth, with what we've seen from Pete Golding so far, is extremely important, right? Because he's not going to, unless he changes, he's not going to go run Princely out there for 85% of the snaps and just lean on him. That's not what he's shown himself to be. So, you need good depth pieces for this defense to succeed. And, whether, you viewed Barron as a starter or as one of those depth pieces, obviously by chain reaction, you lose one of those tonight.
Yeah, and this defense is going to be good with or without Tyler Barron. So nobody hear anything different on that one. Now, I was wondering, with Tyler Barron being gone, and you're talking about spelling Princely, Amon Mielen, would we have a situation where TJ Dudley, who played that role in the Peach Bowl, where that kind of happens more often, and maybe Ole Miss goes and has a little bit better depth at linebacker, or maybe Santarum Perkins has more of a role at the linebacker? There's a lot of unanswered questions right now.
That, what you just touched on there at the end, is what I'm really curious about, is what Santarum Perkins' positional future is. And I had asked Pete Golding about this in Atlanta, and he had kind of said, look, like, his role is going to expand. So, I don't know. Maybe this changes that. Maybe you see him at edge for another year after this if they can't get somebody else in. I don't know. But yeah, as you mentioned, TJ Dudley is somebody that I'm really curious to watch this spring. Just what plans do they have for this guy? Because it's kind of an unprecedented situation. Just have this guy come in for the bowl game, play a bunch. I mean, I was shocked by how much he played, truly. It's clearly somebody that they trust, So
in the COVID year, they did something similar with Otis Reese. I don't know if you were. He came in like his first game was the Mississippi State game. It was his first game was the Egg Bowl, and he played a ton. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, well, interesting thought of what's going on with that. Now, what do you see? I saw that Kendrick Blackshire committed to Texas just a few minutes ago as well. What are you hearing transfer-wise as potentially that could pop? Because everybody's going to blame Ole Miss's academic calendar for this happening because they haven't started classes. And yet I get that. But this is a double-edged sword because Ole Miss is about to start getting the advantage because they're the ones that can still recruit transfers because other places drop out as closed. So,
yeah, this is exhausting, Stephen. You know what I mean? This is so overwhelming and exhausting. It's like, can we just have a moment of peace? No. So yeah, look, the recruiting guys know that the transfer rumor is better than I do. But I think you're in for a busy week plus if you're Ole Miss. So we'll see what comes and goes there. But yeah, it's interesting because I've kind of been debating, like, do I want to write a story about the ad drop deadline and its impact on Ole Miss's transfer class? But it's the thing that's kind of keeping me from doing that is we don't know the full impact of it yet because, as you mentioned, they're about to start benefiting from it. So maybe that's something from down the line to do a little bit more reporting on. But yeah,
And Jackson Dart is not the quarterback at Ole Miss if Ole Miss's drop ad date is not in the first week of February.
This is true.
It's one of those weird things. And like I said, Ole Miss is about to take advantage. In the last 2 weekends of January, Lane Kiffin generally does some of his best work in the transfer portal. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how it goes. Like I heard that Des Ricks might be visiting. It was like between Oregon and Ole Miss for his last spot. He's also visiting A&M. So there's everybody's assuming this is ending. This thing ain't ending for another couple of weeks.
No. Nope. And look, I mean, they just showed you with Chris Graves and TJ Dudley last summer that it's like, can you ever really say it's going to end? Even with the windows, there's loopholes, there's extraneous circumstances. So it never stops, really.
And this is what I tell people all the time is like with Ole Miss having that late drop ad date, they're the school that has the chance to benefit with Alabama having opening right now, Washington having transfer portal opening, Arizona. That's 3 teams in the top 15. And assuming shortly, Michigan, the national champion, could have opening times as well. So that's 4 top 15 teams that Ole Miss could benefit from because of that late drop ads period.
Yeah. And look, I mean, if you want to pick from the edges from any 4 programs, you'll take the ones that just played in the college football playoff. So,
nuts. Lots of good stuff. I do want to thank you for stopping by tonight, David. I'll let you get on with your day. Try and stay warm if you can, buddy.
Oh, I am a Pennsylvanian, Stephen. This is nothing. We're okay.
Oh, I lived in Horsham, Pennsylvania for 2 years. Right. I know what this is.
All right, appreciate you.
Take care, buddy.
All right, see ya.
Bye. All right, that was David Eckert from the Clarion Ledger talking. We're going to go over the chat a little bit, but I did want to talk to a beat writer so you guys can see what's going on as well. I'm pretty fired up. I'm going to be a little bit behind on the chat. I apologize for that. We'll start off with this one. Jared Ivey and his Peach Bowl Defensive MVP Award would like to remind Ole Miss fans not to be worried about this. Jared Ivey and Kamarion Franklin probably had the biggest night tonight. I'm not saying this isn't a loss. The Ole Miss defense, with what they could cook up with having Amon Allen and Barron, there's probably some cool stuff. But I viewed Tyler Barron as a luxury piece because they had Princely Amon Allen, because they had Walter Nolan, because of the other players that are in this lineup as we speak. I think that defensive line, especially defensive end, was probably the one position on that defense that was losable, if that makes sense. Parks Tesler says the D-line will be just as scary. Streaming in from Baton Rouge. Yes, and don't forget to mention that where you're watching from. Logan Henderson says, do you see Perkins starting this year at linebacker? No. Well, I don't know. Potentially. This is my thought, okay? I think Pooh Paul is going to start. I think he is going to be the alpha dog in that room, okay? He is going to be the player that is just in that room locked down. And you're going to have TJ Dudley, who is going to get on the field. As David Eckert said earlier, he played a lot of snaps in the Peach Bowl. So that means Suntarine Perkins either has to start at one of those linebacker slots or at the Husky type role. And I don't know where he fits in that role. I don't know how that's going to look. Now, maybe if this was an old style playing with 3 linebackers, absolutely. But I could see some Coney Connor type stuff. Honestly, it depends on how much weight that Suntarine puts on in the offseason. If he can play at the regular linebacker position, and maybe that pushes TJ Dudley out. There's a lot of good questions. Tanner Pettit, I was sad about this until I remembered how great our D-line class is. No reason to worry. Cam and other freshmen will be fine. Yeah, like I said, Kamarion Franklin was probably the big winner in this whole thing. Now we're going to bring in Brad Logan to the show. Brad, you are live. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. We had David Eckert earlier talking about what is going on. What are you hearing up in North Mississippi right now? First of all, are you staying warm?
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much shut everything down, didn't they? I mean, it's it spits any kind of snow at all, and all heck breaks loose. I think right now everybody's kind of monitoring. I don't know what you guys have talked about, but Tyler Barron, obviously Pete Nakos of On3 has came out and changed his prediction machine to for Barron to flip to Louisville. We knew there were some family ties there.
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and
his
see.
brother.
Yeah. So it appears that he's probably going to Louisville.
No, Barron's already released a graphic. He's already.
Oh, has he?
released
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've just literally walked in and started looking at my phone. So with him gone, I mean, I don't know that it's the end of the world. I think there's some opportunities there. I think a lot of people are making, I don't want to say too much out of this, but I mean, you've got a whole nother portal cycle coming. So if it's going to happen, it'd be best to happen now rather than happen in August. So
yes,
there's definitely some opportunities there to find another one. Now, sure. I mean, I think he was pretty good. I mean, there's been some mixed reviews out of Tennessee, but I think at the end of the day, he's a good player, and he'll probably do well at Louisville.
Yeah, and honestly, if we're just going to be real about it, he's there with his brother. He's there with Tamari McDonald. He's there with Wesley Walker. All the Tennessee boys are together, and he's going up against offensive linemen that aren't quite SEC quality. And he has a chance to, if Louisville wins that conference, if they get past Florida State, they're in the college football playoff. So maybe it's a little bit of an easier path there. I do think that Princely Amamielin was probably the pass rush leader that Ole Miss had of the transfer portal. He was the number one. Barron was the number two. And I think Barron maybe couldn't get past that.
Yeah, and I think, too, so many of these players coming back. I mean, you've got Jared Ivey coming back, Jeremiah Pegues coming back. I think with those players coming back, it kind of loosens the fall a little bit. And I think, once again, I think with so much of the supporting cast coming back from Pete Golding's defense, and we heard since the last time we visited, John Saunders Jr. has elected to come back for yet another season. So just being able to see what the team has been able to bring back, it's kind of funny. We've said it a lot that, recruiting the transfer portal is one thing, but recruiting your roster, and Ole Miss has done a tremendous job of recruiting its roster, and we'll just have to see what happens. But, yeah, defensive line is not an area that I would get too terribly concerned with, and so we'll see what Ole Miss direction they go with now.
And also tonight, and I figured I'd talk to you, like Kendrick Blackshear committed to Texas tonight, which means by process of elimination, that Shark has to be a Morian Walker, right?
I would think so. I mean, there's been a lot of smoke surrounding him, and we've still haven't heard what that Shark was for. That was early yesterday morning at around 6 a.m. Central Time. So I would think that would be the case. I'm not going to lie. I thought Blackshear would fit in great in the system at Ole Miss. And I was beginning to think that he was the one that Pete Golding was talking about. He went to Texas, did not commit on the spot, and I thought Ole Miss might have a chance there. But a little bit of surprise. I think that he committed to Texas this late. I say this late. I've expected him to commit sooner. But at the end of the day, that was one that I think Ole Miss definitely could have used on its defense.
So Ole Miss has this weekend and next weekend, and the drop ad deadline is like the 2nd of February, somewhere around there. It's very in the early part. And I've been trying to remind Ole Miss fans, it's like their disadvantage that they have with their academic calendar by starting school so late, they're about to get an advantage while still being able to recruit people into February. And that's how they got Jackson Dart. That's how that many players have come into this Ole Miss program. Now, we've seen today that it looked like Des Ricks, it might visit, and other players from, let's see, Alabama. There's a Washington player or two that we have our eye on, and those portal windows are opening up at those schools, and potentially Michigan could come open in the next couple of days, where one of the few schools that can take advantage of that is Ole Miss.
Yeah, and I thought I saw where Des Ricks was crystal ball to A&M. I don't know if Steve Wiltfong did that. Did I see that? Am I making that up?
Somebody did, but that was when he was the only visit there. And then he canceled the LSU visit, and it was between Oregon and Ole Miss was going to get his maybe his last visit or something like that.
Okay. Well, in any event, I mean, what we've learned with the Barron, the McDonald, all of these commitments that have now, a couple of those guys obviously now are at Louisville, a commitment, while it didn't mean much before, boy, it really doesn't mean anything now. I mean, it's pretty much just like, hey, I enjoyed my time here. I'll commit, but I'm not locked down to anybody. And so it's the commitment, regardless of high school player or not. I mean, and even when you think you've got them signed on the dotted line, it's the NIL package. And That means nothing now. And, not to get off too deep into this, but I think this is important. I've been asked this a number of times. I've had a chance to kind of think about this when I've been asked this. What's the future of NIL and the transfer portal? Well, number one, I think, we're always going to be in a situation for a college athlete to become compensated. And I'm fine with that. And I don't have a problem with that. The problem is, there is no signature that binds the player to the university. And now the university could be binding to the player, but it can't be vice versa right now. I think I understand the different windows, if you have the different transfer window, but at some point there's got to be some form of accountability from the player to the school that they sign their NIL paperwork with. So if there's anything that I wish the NCAA or the governing body of college football would do, was create something to where it is not 24/7 on these coaches. Now, nobody's playing a violin for a college football coach that's making millions of dollars. I get that. But it's very difficult. Number one, it's difficult to cover it, but it's really difficult if it's your lifeblood in regards to getting these players on your campus to play. If you have to continually recruit the player nonstop. I mean, was it December 15th when Barron and McDonald committed to Ole Miss? Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right. That's about a month ago.
So I don't know about you, but myself, I thought, okay, it's over. They've made their commitment. I was told that they had a house, or not they, but I was told that Barron was renting a house in Oxford. In fact, I went so far, someone told me that the dude had already moved in. And then the next thing we know, Barron is now off to Louisville. Now, I thought maybe last week or the week before, there was some open back and forth about whether Barron was going to go to Louisville or not. Then he tweeted the finish line from Oxford, and then Lane retweeted it, and we thought, okay, well, it's over again. Well, it wasn't over. Now we're back to where he's gone to Louisville, and I think it's probably over. So the point I'm trying to make is there's got to be some form of legislation for these transfer portal players once they make a decision to stay with that. But even now with the transfer rules where you can go in and out, and there's really no rule from the NCAA anymore, that Ole Miss is seeing the fruition of that because of Juju Murray. So I just wish there was something more concrete in the transfer portal with players going to schools, and it's just going in and out. It's just making it almost impossible to follow.
Yeah. And, honestly, let's just be real. The universities need to make the kids employees. You need to put them under contract, even though if it's 3 or 4 or whatever years, you need to put them under contract. They need to quit going after all the fans' money and trying to buy players. What you're getting millions of dollars, use that money to buy players. And the reason they're not doing it, honestly, is because if football goes out of the pot and becomes an employment type situation, that hurts the whole situation with Title IX. And that basically blows up non-revenue sports at school. You would have a situation where maybe there's 2 or 3 sports on a campus. And because of that, they're going to try and do this as long as possible. But the answer is make them employees, make them sign contracts, and let the school have the revenue, pay them out of the TV money. It seems like that would be easy to me.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously no skin in the game.
I have no idea what the answer is, but there has to be something to have in place for coaches to be able to recruit and to be able to put teams together. Right now, it's just almost impossible. And I don't know how long these collectives can go. I think even as profitable as I say profitable, even as affluent as these collectives are across the country, even the most affluent collectives, how long can you go putting together teams like you're doing? Because at the end of the day, if programs and fan bases are given to certain collectives, are they taking away from what they're giving to the university for facility upgrades? A lot of this money that's going towards collectives, we're normally going towards the universities as a whole for upgrades for facilities and coaching contracts and all that stuff. So does that just mean that those fan bases are giving more money? They're giving the same to the university, and then they're giving extra to the collective. That very well could be the case. Longevity of the collective process, the transfer portal, the NIL, because originally, Stephen, if you remember, the NIL was put into place so that Stephen Willis, who plays running back for Ole Miss, could at this point sell his jersey with Willis across the back. He could work for Willis Auto Dealership so they could help with their advertising. The NIL all of a sudden turned from you can make money off your name, image, and likeness to, okay, here's how much money we would like to give you to play football at our school. That's what it turned into. And that happened quickly. I don't even know if there's a separation in that, but it went from point A to point B very quickly. And now we have a minor league NFL system in place where all of the major conferences, which I don't know that we'll have very more than 2 to 3 conferences, maybe 4 in the next 5 years, the way it's going. So you'll have a minor league system to the NFL. And the question is what direction are we going? Are we going to make the players representatives of the conference, make the players or representatives of the universities, pay them as employees, or continue down the system that we're continuing with collectives just outbidding each other? Yeah. That's what we're doing.
It's absolutely nuts. And right now, honestly, we're benefiting from it as Ole Miss fans. But I can see where if the shoe was on the other foot, you would have a problem with it. Anyway, I know somebody that says the system is broken, and that is Lane Kiffin. And he asked me what about 12 personnel football with Lane Kiffin watching? Because I am considering Lane Kiffin an everydayer at this point, Brad. Him sharing the links of the program and all that. But I am excited about 12 personnel, and that he's basically picking with me because one of the things I've called for the last 7 months is 2 tight end sets. And I wanted to see, and now with Daquan Wright and Caden Priestcorn, you might have a situation where they both can line up and play football, because whenever Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. was at Florida Atlantic, John Rain and Harrison Bryant were on the field at the same time a ton. So we know that is in the system. Do you think we see some 12 personnel?
I don't know. I think that could be Lane just pulling your chain. I don't know that 12 personnel is in the system for Lane and for Charlie Weiss Jr. I want to revisit what you said just a moment ago. You're right. Lane Kiffin has talked about it a lot, about the system being broken. And his main problem is that there is no collective bargaining. There is no salary cap. And so the rich continue to get richer and the poor are getting even poorer because there is no accountability for the amount of money. Now, I think if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're enjoying this, and you're enjoying the no salary cap because Ole Miss has a fan base and a donor base that is committed to winning. And that has shown in spades over the last couple of months. And it has shown how the director and the leadership by the Grove Collective, by Walker Jones, and how well not only are they raising money, but how well they're allocating its spending and how well the roster management has been. And that is a testament to the leadership, and they're to be commended for that. But what Lane is talking about is very difficult when you go up against mega programs that have unlimited budgets, and he wants some form of accountability. And honestly, he's kind of on an island. He is one of the few coaches that will even talk about it. He is one of the few coaches that will at least that talk about it, that will address it, and that will ask for solutions. I think at the end of the day, college football is going to have a college football czar, if you will. They're going to have a CEO, and everyone kind of points to Greg Sankey, and that's simply not because I think Greg Sankey's any good. I'm not so sure he's very good at all. I just think that's because he is the main guy in the Southeastern Conference. He's the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, and he's the one that gets all the eyeballs, and he is the name that everybody looks at. But I do think the world of college football, and I do think when I talked about a couple of years down the road, when we have abolished all of these conferences and you have 2 to 3 main conferences, I do think there'll be a commissioner of those 2 or 3 conferences, and you will at that point have a super conference. And I can date you back to 1991, 1992. So many years ago. I'm not going to add it up. It just seems like it was yesterday, but it wasn't. It was a while ago. And Jackie Sherrill talked about that specifically. It may not have been that specific year, but it was a long time ago. And he talked about how he felt like college football would be a collective group of people, and it would just be the superpowers of football. And it is absolutely going to happen, I think, over the next couple of years.
Brad, but Jackie Sherrill is a habitual liar.
Well, say what you want to about Jackie Sherrill. He was right about that.
I know. The Billy Brewer line. That
Yeah.
was one of the first Egg Bowl mudslinging things I saw.
They did not like each other.
No, not even a little bit. And that would have been 91. That would have been right about the first time the Egg Bowl was played back on campus. Mississippi
91,
State winning the game in Starkville. Yeah.
That's right. And then in 92 it came back to Oxford when it snowed, and we could go on from there.
Oh yeah, that was a fun Thanksgiving weekend. I remember that because of how cold it was. Even down, I watched that game in, I guess, Florence, Mississippi, and I just remember how cold it was. Even down where I was in South Mississippi, I can't imagine what it was like up in North Mississippi.
Yeah, it was freezing in Section F because that's where I was sitting, where it was spitting snow, and it was absolutely frigid that day in Oxford.
Yeah, and the coldest game that I've ever been to, as an Ole Miss fan, is probably the Ole Miss and Georgia Tech game in the Music City Bowl. That game, I had to go in and watch the game in the second half in the photographer room.
Oh,
2013.
Oh, that was 2013. I was talking about. I thought you were talking about the Eli.
No, that was my wedding night. Believe it or not, I got married that day.
Okay,
and,
well, that was either that game or the 1992 Liberty Bowl. The 92 Liberty Bowl is probably the coldest I've ever been in my life, football or not. The Liberty Bowl is either the hottest or the coldest places, and everybody that's watching this video podcast, going to listen to this, you can count on 2 times in your life when you're the hottest and you're the coldest is probably the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't help that Ole Miss fans' experience in that game is either in the opening week of the season or in the last game in the season they played. Yeah. That is their Liberty Bowl experience. And other than Robert Kimdichie running the ball on 4th down, I mean, Ole Miss usually has pretty good time up there.
Yeah. He'll never let that down.
No, not even a little bit.
That was a terrible. That was a terrible call. I mean, to me, that jumps out to me more than 4th and whatever.
4th and 25.
Yeah. To me, that's what's ingrained in my mind when you talk about Hugh Freeze's non-shining moment at Ole Miss. Just that Kimdichie Memphis game just jumps out at me.
Hugh Freeze and his double pass obsession to wide receivers is what jumps out to me. Him, that Laquan Treadwell pass that never worked, him running that, and then him trying to break that out in this game like he could pull that over on us is like, no, we saw all of that. There's no way that was going to work.
Yeah, never worked.
So, question here from Will Dewey. Do transfer players keep their NIL deal or bonus during the offseason when they decide to flip to another school? The Grove Collective, by the way, Will, they pay monthly. They don't just do like a lump sum up front to where it's money just out the door. They are smart with their money. And if Tyler Barron is not enrolled in the school, he's probably not getting much other than a slight signing bonus. So Brad, what do you got going on this week?
Well, interested to see what happens in Baton Rouge tomorrow night because Ole Miss has an opportunity the next 2 weeks. Number 1's at LSU, and number 2 is at Auburn. And those are 2 opportunities because I firmly believe if Ole Miss goes 1-1, I think you come home and then you've got an opportunity to play Arkansas the following Wednesday, 8:00. And I think the pavilion's going to be absolutely jammed. The students will be back. And I think it's going to be a great environment. My whole thing about Ole Miss basketball is you need to win all of your home games, or don't let any more than 1 get away from you. And you win 3 on the road, you finish 10-6 in the conference. You win 1 or 2 in the SEC tournament. All of a sudden, you're a 7-8 seed. You go 9-9 or 8-8 in conference. Win 1 or 2 in Nashville. You're probably a 10 or 11 seed. I think it's that big of a shift. I think there's a great opportunity for Ole Miss to win at least one of these next week. It's going to be hard to beat Auburn, but I think if they can beat LSU and then play well against Auburn, may not win, come home, kind of get the stretch run going. They've got a game against Texas A&M, is very winnable on the road. There's some opportunities coming up for Ole Miss, so I'm definitely honed in there. The transfer portal, I'm interested to see about the Michigan cornerback. And now to see what Ole Miss, what direction they go now that Tyler Barron has flipped to Louisville. And to see if there might be another opportunity out there. I don't know. I think offensive line play, there's probably a couple they're working on. But, at some point, I think they're going to shut this thing down and then look forward to that next transfer portal window.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting indeed. But, Brad, thank you so much for joining the show tonight. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on, man.
By the way, and I've told you this a million times, but I have people like just at the basketball game the other night, I had two people stop me and say, "Hey, man, I just want to say I really enjoy what you do." I was like, "Well, just out of curiosity, where do you listen?" He says, "I listen to Stephen Willis." He said, "Every time I get up, every morning I get up, I get on my elliptical, and I turn on Stephen Willis." And he said, "Every now and then I'll hear you coming on there, but yeah, I really enjoy it." So yeah, a lot of people watching, and now we've learned that Lane Kiffin's watching this show.
Yeah, seriously. Lane's, like I said, Lane's an everydayer at this point. I talk about 12 personnel all the time, and I will until the cows come home. Now that we know that Lane's watching.
Always a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Take care, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. All right. That's Brad and Logan from Inside the Rebels, the Red and Blue Crew podcast, the Believe in Ole Miss podcast. All of that is Brad and Logan. We're going to take some chat questions real quick before we get out of here. Donna Akers says, staying snug in Pontotoc. Yes, Donna, thank you very much. Tim Skelton says, hotty toddy from McCarley, Mississippi. And let's see, going through here, David Landrum's watching in Louisville, Mississippi. LOL, doom and gloom. The season begins in September. Practice in Oxford. Transfers never stop. Yeah. Roster construction is a never-ending thing. You'll never see me get upset about any player, both recruiting or otherwise. There's some people that are going to look at a kid and say, oh, we got to have this kid forever. And if he goes, what are we ever going to do? And that just doesn't jive with me. Jerry Marshall, I'm not sure how starting classes so late is going to help us at this point. That's because other people are not going to be able to recruit kids. Whenever everybody else is in class and they can't enroll anymore, Ole Miss is one of the few teams that's going to take advantage of Alabama players, Michigan players, Washington players, Arizona players who are open in the transfer portal window. We're going to be one of the few teams that is still going. So it's a benefit. Mr. Guest from the frozen tundra of Taylor, Mississippi. And yes, on Taylor Road, it's a bit crazy, but it only changes depth a little bit. Tanner Petit, how much NIL does this free up? I don't know. That they have an NDA attached to that stuff. Nobody will ever know the amount on that one. And if they claim otherwise, they're probably lying. Jonathan Whitaker says, more room for us to work with losing him. I believe just me. I trust in Golden and Brown. Jared Parker, yeah, shouldn't be a big deal. He just found out probably he was going to play behind a bunch of guys. Yeah, it was something like that. And his brother's in Louisville too. It's better that Ole Miss found out now than finding out in a couple of months. LMAO, you can't believe Ole Miss only needs 3 or 4 defensive linemen. They have to rotate. Every good team needs depth. Hey, C. Rogers, go look at the depth chart. Akello Stone's back. Xavion Harris is back. All 4 of those freshman defensive linemen, including Kamarion Franklin. Ole Miss has 10 legit players without Tyler Barron at defensive line right now. Seriously, go look it up. I'm not making that up. ST Weasel, freshman will need to step up. Rebel Munchkin, Terry, Mississippi, presently 19 degrees under, thankfully, clear skies tonight. I was sad about this until I remembered how great our D-line class was. No reason to worry. Cam and other freshmen will do fine. Biscuits and SEC. Hey, respect Biscuits and SEC. What's up, y'all? Do y'all think Kiffin goes after another defensive line piece in the portal or post-spring? Honestly, I don't think so. Unless it's somebody like if Jaheim Otis gets into the portal. I think Kiffin would go after that, obviously. But I don't know if Ole Miss is just going to chase another edge rusher because, as I've said on the show many times, adding for the sake of adding does you no good. So we'll see exactly what's going up. David Landry, sounds like Barron didn't want to have to work for a starting job and wanted to hand it to him. There's a little bit of truth to that. James Hall from Brookhaven, Mississippi. I don't believe this. We'll throw the SIP off course. No, not even a little bit. Mr. Guest, how exciting is that? Santarin Perkins' role is going to expand per Golding. That is awesome. Kiffin's burner account. Hey, Steve, glad to be tuned in to hear your take on this. That's a great name. What are the two unannounced Sharks? I assume one is the Michigan DB. Yeah, process elimination would say that. Maybe Golding did one of the Shark for Brian Brown. That's not something that normally happens, but it's like I told myself after I got into an argument, it's like, well, that doesn't happen. And it's like, well, what's to stop him from doing it for the first time? There's no rules. There's no Rosetta Stone when it comes to a Pete Golding Shark. David Landrum, all this does is give opportunities for people to step up and warn some people some playing time next season. Tanner Pettit uses this free NIL to help get Lance Hurd. I do not know if Lance Hurd is an option at the moment. I'm not sure, but all of a sudden his name has kind of died down a little bit. I think Diego Pounds, once Ole Miss got Diego Pounds, it may have made it to where Lance Hurd was a little bit of a bridge too far. I think that lineman that we signed out of high school would be great. That'd be Kamarion Franklin. Mr. Guest, funny here, if Barron has already moved in, he ain't moving out anytime soon. Jerry Marshall, who is left to get offensive line or defensive line? I think offensive line. They might get a couple of players on the O-line. You can look for that. Sudai, Hattie Toddy from Corinth, hometown of Coach B. Brown. They're very proud of B. Didn't want to lose Barron, Ellisville, Mississippi. Michael Specs, I think Barron leaving doesn't help, but it's not the end of the world. That's actually a good way to put it, Michael. David Geikern is DAG Reb from Flowood, Mississippi. Douglas Sherman, Kari Coleman. He's on the roster, so it looks like Kari Coleman is coming back as well, which he could play some outside rush end as well. CT. Do you think Nolan, Uman? Yes, they obviously will. Richardson left because the cornerback coach lost his job. That's not a loyalty thing that happened there. Barron happened because they actively worked to get all the Tennessee guys. They had Wesley Walker, Tamari McDonald, Tyler Barron, and they recruited Tyler Barron's little brother. It's not a situation where there's anything I think you need to worry about. Got to think we got somebody taking a spot that hasn't officially committed yet. I do not know about that. I'm telling you, I think that the Tyler Barron rush in was a luxury position, honestly. Why would he go to Louisville just to lose to Florida State and Miami? Ridiculous. Don't ever say that just to lose to Miami. This is in 1987. Right now, anybody can beat Miami. I hate losing anyone, but Kiffin is great at the finish line. Hottie Toddy from McGregor, Texas. Let's see. We're going to get out of here in just a second as well. Wade Bell says Music City was colder. It was. I was in Shelbyville, Tennessee that night. Like I said, I got married that day. Watched a little bit of the end of the game at night. It was crazy. All the water frozen on the side of the road. I'll never forget it. See, Ole Miss going after another running back? I think so. We'll see exactly how that goes. Again, I was told by somebody that would know to pay attention to the visits. And let's see. Don't forget Brandon Turnage. He may be the rogue shark from Willis. Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. Like I said, there is no Rosetta Stone for this. We need Pete Golding to sit down and tell us exactly what this looks like moving forward. And Caleb Osborne says, just as long as we keep Nolan and Princely and Pupal, I'll be happy. All of those guys are moved in, to my knowledge. They're moved in. They're good to go. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. Although I guess if somebody could say, hey, come to our school real quick right now, we'll pay the rest of the money on that lease plus a certain amount of money. I guess that's possible as well, but it's not likely. Walter Nolan is kind of home. Anyway, we're going to stop it right now. This has been Shark Tank Live. Thank you very much. Thank you to David Eckert and Brad Logan for joining the show tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about on the show Jackson Dart in year 3 and the ceiling that he could be in. We'll talk about some transfer portal stuff afterwards. I think I mentioned Blackshear, who committed to Texas when I recorded that as well. So just ignore that. And then we talked about the basketball game as well. So tune in for that. Should be a lot of fun. I hope everybody has a good Tuesday. Everybody stay warm. Everybody stay cool. We'll see you later. Hotty toddy.